Welcome to Introduction to Bioengineering at Stanford University. This is a brief video introducing the class project, the Bionaut Project. Let's get into it. Remember, the goal for this course, Intro to BIOE, is to become a bionaut. Bios, life, not a sailor. We're sailing into the biotic future as we learn what bioengineering can be in the 21st century. And this involves becoming somebody who understands, as you know, what do living systems do? How do we work with them? How do we partner with them? Can you talk about this with others? Are you familiar with the tools that bioengineers use, at least as a beginner? And could you decide what to work on? A bionaut is someone who can not just go along for the ride, but steer the ship. What should we be thinking about doing? What are the big problems? What are the tiny problems? What are your problems? What are her problems, his problems, their problems? So this last part of our goal for you in becoming a bionaut is to start to put it together, start to imagine what bioengineering could do where you are. All right, let's get into it. Step by step, this project will take you through the process of imagining what you might wish for and then thinking about whether or not it's a good thing to do. First, we're going to work on brainstorming bioengineering opportunities. Second, there's this funny word, framestorming. We're going to framestorm better opportunities or ideas and teach you how to do that. Third, you're going to have so many ideas. It might be a good idea to ask, is it legal? You're going to get in trouble if you did it or not? And also, is it ethical or unethical? Maybe those are the same things, maybe they're not the same things. We'll give you a tool to think about that. Thus far, your ideas will be pretty simple in their description. We use a tool called design criteria so that you can develop a richer specification of what's involved in your bioengineering project. Finally, once you've started to decide what to work on and what you are super excited about, we'll pull out one last tool, the futures wheel, so that you can better understand the impacts, the direct impacts, the second order impacts, the third order impacts, and so on. And from that, do one last check in terms of whether or not you think your project's really a good idea or not, or if you need to make some final adjustments. This will then lead to a final decision about whether or not you think your project should go ahead. Now, you're not going to do the project. Your job here is just to specify what the project would be. Overall, the goal here, again, is to describe a compelling bioengineering project of your own choosing. We're not going to give it to you. You have to come up with it. That's the whole point of being a bionaut, that you are truly excited about and you can share with others. So that's the primary goal. And along the way, there's a hidden secondary goal, which is to give you improved literacy. Like maybe you've already heard about brainstorming, but we're going to level up your brainstorming. But most of the tools I bet you haven't seen before. And literacy in practice with generally useful tools for deciding what to do. These are tools that are useful in bioengineering, but if you go into business, if you go into the theater, whatever you do, right? Like these will be useful tools that you're getting through the class project. So enjoy that too. Let's take them one at a time. What I'm going to do here is I'm not going to spend all the time you need to spend on the tools. I'm just going to give you a taste of it. And then when you look at the project module assignment, we've embedded links to websites and resources, YouTube videos, and this and that. 5 minutes here, 8 minutes there. Would really encourage you and are expecting you to watch those videos, practice the materials before you apply the tools. I'll just give you a taste of each tool. So the first tool is brainstorming. And again, you probably heard about brainstorming, or at least familiar with the word. I want you to think about it though, like chess. Maybe you know how to set up a chessboard. That's pretty good, and maybe you even know how to play chess. But you're probably not, maybe some of you, but I guess most of you are not chess grandmasters. You're not among the best people in the world at playing chess. And so even if you know how to set up a brainstorm, maybe you're not a grand master a brainstorming. So in that spirit, please pay attention to what's going on here. In other words, never miss an opportunity to be fabulous, right? Okay. Brainstorming fundamentals. This comes from the D.school at Stanford, where I have a lot of fun and do some teaching as well. The first thing about brainstorming, these are like rules of brainstorming, which is a little bit paradoxical, but they're rules, so you have a good brainstorm or a great brainstorm. You want to do this with others, and this part of the project you can do with others, and we're asking you to do with others. When you're brainstorming, you don't want to judge what somebody says. It's like, oh, that's a stupid idea. If you say that, brainstorm's going to crash, right? So suspend critique. There'll be plenty of time to figure out whether it was a good or bad idea later. Once you get that out of the way, now you can go for wild ideas and encourage it, right? It's like something sounds totally crazy, just keep going. Oftentimes the next thing that comes up will be really important or good. Work together, build on the ideas of others. Listen to what other people are saying and add on to it. My favorite turn of phrase when I'm brainstorming is like, yes, and. Yes, and. Like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Yes, and. And it's like, oh, we're going to put a potato on the moon. Yes, and it'll be French fries the next time we go there. It doesn't make any sense. Just yes, and as a tool will help you build on the ideas of others. It's amazing. Go for volume, not loudest volume, like not up to 11, but go for as many ideals as possible. And so we're going to challenge you in this part of the project, wait for it, to come up with 100 bioengineering project ideas. And we mean it, right? Like go for quantity. And once you get into the flow, be no problem. When you're working in a group, listen and participate to maintain a single thread of a conversation, momentum as a group. Don't break the group up into side conversations. Don't go it alone. Just get for the headline of the idea, right? Capture the idea and don't give a whole essay on your idea. Well, yes, I'm thinking of this interesting new thermometer that's made out of plastic and has a particular color that I think might go well with my drapes. And it's like, no. It's like, oh, we're making a upside down thermometer. Cool, yes, and what if we, you see what I mean? Lastly, you need to write down what the headline ideas are as you go. And everybody participating together in a brainstorm must have their own pencil or marker if you're using a whiteboard. You don't want one person to have to listen and write down everybody's ideas because they couldn't participate otherwise. So you can work in parallel in terms of recording the ideas, all on one big giant sheet of paper on a chalkboard or a whiteboard, but everybody has to be able to write independently. Okay. And just as a reminder, practice using the turn of phrase when you're in a brainstorm. When somebody says something, listen to it and go, yes, and what about this? Right? Unbelievably, these are magic words in a brainstorm. I guarantee if you only practice using yes and, your brainstorming will become 10 times better. Okay, now, next tool, brainstorming. The amazing author Ursula K. Le Guin has a nice quote. There are no right answers to wrong questions. So if you have a project idea and your project idea sounds pretty cool to you, but it's not framed as well as it could be, you could spend a huge amount of time, and in the real world, a huge amount of resources working on the wrong problem, working to answer the wrong question. And so framestorming is the second tool we're going to give you. And this tool is to help you double check and really actively question whether or not you're asking the right question, or you could ask a better question. This comes from a colleague, Tina Seelig. In brainstorming, you're given a prompt and you come up with a lot of ideas. In framestorming, you're questioning the question, right? And Tina likes to say you got to framestorm before you brainstorm. In our case, we're going to take your brainstorm, as you'll see, and you'll pick your topics or questions, and then we'll framestorm just a subset, because you're going to have so many ideas. It'll work, trust me. let me give you a simple example to think about. Hey, everybody, let's plan a birthday party for Sally. What should we do for Sally's birthday? Brainstorm, right? And so if we brainstorm on what should we do for Sally's birthday, we'll get all these amazing ideas for what to do for Sally's birthday. Um, Brainstorming, we'd go, let's brainstorm how we could have a celebration for Sally. Like, let's have, what should we do for a party for Sally? Like, I just got rid of birthday. If we brainstormed on that question, right, we get a different set of answers than what should we do for Sally's birthday? What should we do to have a party for Sally? Like slightly different questions, totally different outcomes from the brainstorm. So that's what framestorming is about. Like keep it wild and weird. Let me give you an example. Right? We're questioning the question. We're going to brainstorm the question, in other words. So maybe some of your project ideas had to do with cancer and fighting cancer. Like, how can we fight cancer? Right? This is an example of skin cancer. How can we fight cancer? But what if we said, instead, like, let's brainstorm the question. Instead of how can we fight cancer, let's just brainstorm. How can we prevent cancer? How can we tease cancer? How can we love cancer? How can we tickle cancer? Remember, there's no bad idea in brainstorming. And we're brainstorming the question here. How can we tickle cancer? How can we stop cancer? How can we share cancer? How can we lick cancer? It doesn't make any sense. But I shouldn't have said that because we're brainstorming. How can we blog cancer? Oh, that's interesting. How could we blockchain cancer?
Wow.
Could I use the blockchain to create a advocacy group in support of a particular type of skin cancer? Like, oh, it's like, whoa. So we're brainstorming the question instead of locking in on how can we fight skin cancer. You could keep going, of course. You could have 100 different ideas here. And then you go, which one of these is really unique, potentially powerful, has never been asked before, lets me pioneer an entirely new Bionaut idea and opportunity? So I love all these tools we're introducing you to, but framestorming is really one of my favorites because it lets you question the question. And if you really embrace framestorming, I guarantee you will find new ways of thinking about important problems that nobody's uncovered before. That's framestorming. Okay, next. And this might be like, well, how could this issue arise in bioengineering? You don't know, but it's good to have this tool in case it does, right? So what do we mean by legal ethical? You can map actions into 4 quadrants. The ones on the top, they're legal. The ones on the bottom are illegal. The ones on the left are ethical. The ones on the right are unethical. So I could be in the top left quadrant and I'm doing something, it's legal and ethical. I'm in the bottom right quadrant, it's illegal and unethical. If I'm in either top left or bottom right quadrant, it's kind of obvious what I should be doing. Like if I'm in the top left, go for it. If I'm in the bottom right, don't do it. But what if it's legal yet unethical? Should I do that? Or what if it's illegal but ethical? Should I do it? And so the top right and bottom left are like a little bit interesting. And then of course, opportunities might lie over the boundaries. So let's see some examples. A pediatrician taking care of a kid. That's legal, that's ethical. All right, pretty easy, right? Somebody robbing somebody else with a handgun. That's illegal in most places, so far as I know, and it's certainly unethical, so far as I'm concerned. Cheating on your boyfriend or girlfriend or partner. It's probably legal, but I wouldn't call it ethical. I'd call that unethical. Right? Rosa Parks, riding on a bus. Illegal at the time, but easy to argue it was ethical. Smoking in school. Depends where you are. Might be legal, might be illegal. What about secondhand smoke? That might harm somebody who's not a smoker. That probably, in my mind, makes this unethical. So it gives you a sense of legal ethical. When you come up with your project ideas, we're going to ask you just check, where in this quadrant space does your project idea land? And by the way, at first blush, it's like, yeah, come on, I just want to cure cancer. Okay, probably that's legal and ethical, depending on your idea. Um, but since you're brainstorming and going for hundreds of ideas, my guess is some of them might not all be in the top left, right? And that's okay. You just want to understand and think about how things might deploy if it were to get to the real world. All right, legal, ethical, all good. Next, design criteria. So once you have your ideas and you're selecting like the finalists or the final one, it's important to elaborate on the details of what the thing should be as it manifests in the real world. And I'm going to give you a really simple example here. You'll typically want to have half dozen or so entries in each of these four areas, but let's do a simple one just for the sake of time. So let's say we wanted to make a glowing plant. We're going to bioengineer glowing plants. We've already talked about them. You've seen videos of them. They're wonderful. But like imagine we were starting out on that project. So the first thing about the design criteria is what must this project have? What must your project have? Well, we're making glowing plants. So the glowing plants must glow. It's not negotiable. They have to produce light. All right. And we could write some other things about what must they do. The next thing is what should they do? Should haves, important features of these plants. To start, I might say, my glowing plants should look like normal plants. Sounds reasonable. Again, you could have a lot of entries here. The next category in design criteria is could haves, optional features. Must have, not negotiable, could have, options. Right? Like I got some options on my car. Well, maybe we could have the option of having the glow turn on or off in response to darkness or light. So the plants are only making light when it's dark in the room, or only making light when it's dark outside. The last category of the design criteria, super important, what won't your project have? Not negotiable, it won't have whatever you put in this box, like not on the table. So, for example, I might say, my glowing plants will not share their genes with other creatures. I don't want to, if I have a glowing plant in my house, I don't want my dog to start glowing, right? Like, not negotiable. I don't want a glowing dog from my glowing plant, at least. Right, so that's design criteria. We'll ask you to complete this. And again, with more entries, more detail, just want to give you a quick taste here. Finally, Futures Wheel. This is a tool you can use to evaluate the consequences of success. Imagine your project is real. It's all over the place in the world, right? As a product, a service, or some change. What Futures Wheel lets you do is says, okay, if this change happens in the world, what are the first order consequences as a result of that change in orange? And then what are the consequences of those consequences? Using your imagination, like what are the second order consequences? And then once you get to that second layer or wheel of consequences, you can keep going. What are the third order consequences? And so on. So given a change, use your imagination, say, well, what's this going to do in the world? And if those things happen, what's going to happen because of that? And so on and so forth. Futures Wheel. Sounds pretty simple. What's really interesting about this is suddenly you can find things happening that maybe you wouldn't have expected. And if you can imagine what those things might be, wait for it. Now you can loop back to design criteria and say, would I like to change any of my design criteria so that I'm promoting the consequences I like while minimizing or mitigating or stopping the consequences I don't like? Right? This isn't all open loop. These are tools that are meant to be used in conjunction with one another. Great. Let's look at a couple examples. Right? So we've all experienced the coronavirus outbreak back in 2019. And a first order consequence of that is that we saw that schools shut down and companies shut down and other institutions shut down. And because of that, there was a second order consequence of people staying at home, doing whatever they do at home. And because of that, it was a third order consequence of digital platform companies increasing their growth and standing in society, like Zoom suddenly became a thing, right? Because of the pandemic, there was a first order consequence of hospitals being overwhelmed and supply chains and nurses and doctors being super stressed and dying. Um, we saw a second order consequence of hoarding, potential black markets around masks and other things. We saw a different second order consequence of challenges to governmental systems at every level, local, regional, national, controversies. We saw changes in political leadership due to failures in elections to get reelected. We saw a third order consequence of stresses in trust of the government and other institutions. We potential imagine a fourth order consequence of future social unrest and challenges to democracy and international relations. You get the idea. Let's come back and do this um, with glowing plants. Okay, so imagine my Bionaut project idea is to make a glowing plant, cha-ching, and now I want to know what impacts it's going to have on the world so I can think about these impacts and decide if I want to change any of them. Right, so glowing plants, first order impacts. Hey, my kids are impressed. I bring a glowing plant home, they're like, wow, Dad, that's pretty cool. Um, Next, see, I'm going to have water dependent nightlights. Don't plug it in, got to water it. I have glowing gardens. All right. Um, wow, glowing plants, they're cool. Maybe I get more funding from the government or from investors for plant biotech R&D. All right. And if that's true, maybe I get actually, no, even just the glowing plants itself, this is a first order impact. It's a better tool for plant R&D. I can use the glow to tell me whether genes are on or off in certain tissue types. So like glowing as a print statement or an output statement to let me understand plants. Like super cool tool for plant R&D research. There's more first order consequences. Just get a sense of it. All right. So let's see. New category at flower shows. That's a first order impact. So if people who compete in flower shows start to create new categories around glowing plants, a second order impact would be there's going to be more colors of glowing. And then the third order impact would be like glowing rainbow gardens. And let's see, more flower show stuff. So who participates in flower shows? I don't have time for that. Maybe there'll be greater GMO acceptance among retirees. Like I might enjoy a flower show if I ever retire. And if that's happening, maybe this all comes together and instead of like fall foliage in Vermont or wherever where the leaves change color, maybe we have nighttime foliage where there's different glows of plants. It's not in the fall, it's in the spring and the summer. So you go out at night and people's hillsides and forests are all different colors lit up at night. All right. Okay, better tools for plant biotech R&D, more climate resilient crops, better operational understanding of plants. Finally, we get nitrogen fixing crops for crops that aren't naturally legumes or things like that. These are all second order consequences. Well, then third order consequences or impacts would be reduced starvation risk, increased population would be fourth, more profits for seed corps. Is that good or bad? Depends. What if we could have plants that grow things? If we have full understanding of plants, like I'd like to have a pitcher plant that's just a coffee cup. It's like, why do I have to make coffee cups in a factory? I could just grow coffee cups or grow, thermoses. Could we have, oh no, like nitrogen fixing plants and operational understanding of plants? Maybe we can get plant-based weapons. Could I engineer an apple tree or like a grapefruit plant to make a grenade, where the plants are doing biosynthesis of high energy compounds and then the fruit is a grenade fruit? Like, whoa, like suddenly glowing plants and like I might get military munitions grown off of okay. Um, well, let's come back off that one. Nitrogen fixing, but like, okay, here's the thing. If you wanted this, what would you do in your design criteria to make this outcome more likely? Plant-based weapons, grenade fruit. Or if you didn't want this, what would be in your won't line in the design criteria? See what I mean? See why this gets really interesting? All right, lower CO2 emissions. All right. Okay, let's go back. Glowing gardens. I cannot wait to plant glowing plants in my lawn, in my garden. Maybe that's going to confuse the insects. They're going to be like up all night, or who knows? And maybe there'll be some horizontal gene transfer. Other creatures will get the glowing cassette. And now suddenly, like, not just my garden is glowing, but other things are glowing, like the forest or the birds and insects that are eating the plants or parts of the plants. And if I have confused insects, then maybe I have collapsing ecosystems. It's like maybe I need to like, what do I want this or not? What do I do down here? Water dependent lights, lower electric bills, but more water spills, more shopping because I save money on my utility bill, but more water spills. I have to do more laundry or ruin clothes. And what does that cost? If my kids are impressed, oh no, they're going to have higher expectations. They're going to look at that movie Avatar. It's like, well, that's just a movie. I have glowing plants in real life. So then James Cameron, who made Avatar, is going to have to like double down. He's going to have to go and imagine something even crazier than Pandora and so on. All right, you get the idea. Future's wheel, pretty cool. And the point here is to imagine first, second, third, fourth order impacts. Keep going until you get tired, basically. But most importantly, don't just stop at that. Think about what you want and what you don't want from these impacts and then redesign your project. All right? Reflective questions. The thing about this Bionaut project is we really are not telling you what to do. It's up to you where you are to decide the most important, fun, compelling thing that you'd like to imagine bioengineers can do. And so the first reflective question is it hard? Give it a blank slate. How do you feel about it? Have you been asked to do this sort of thing before? Leaders are asked this all the time. So we cannot wait to see what you come up with and to see that you're practicing these tools, because having these 5 tools and using them once, you just keep going for the rest of your life. But stop for a moment and think about how you feel about it. Was it challenging? Was it easy? Why? What tools of the 5 helped you get going the most? Which tools do you feel like you understand? Which tools would you like to practice some more? Remember, in the assignment itself, there are links to more information, YouTube videos, websites. I'm still learning about all these tools, right? Like I know how to brainstorm. I can get better at brainstorming. I'm definitely not the world's best brainstormer. How often, when you're coming up with a project idea, should you stop to consider the impacts, real or potential, of what you are or might be doing? Should you think about this at all? Or should you check it every step or something in between? That's it. Can't wait to see what your projects are.
All right. Man, I love this Professor Drew ND's lectures.